Good day, good day. Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
How about now?
Ah, there we go. How are you?
Oh, look. Oh, she tried. Yay, Athena's going to be here. There she is. Da, 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 da.
She's muted.
You're muted, Athena.
And Jackie's coming in now too.
Yep.
Get me unmuted. How is that?
There she is. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you.
And Jackie's muted as well.
Okay. So here we go, and I'm glad that we connected.
There we go.
There we go. Everybody is unmuted. Yes.
Cameron, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly fine, Jackie.
All right, good. Hi, Athena.
Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Good. It's great to meet you.
Oh, you too.
Sort of meet you.
Yeah, sort of meet you. And is the positioning on all of this okay? Is that better?
Looks good.
Okay. So sorry about the little mix-up. That was actually on my end. I was all waiting on Skype, so apologies.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
Were the instructions not clear? Or
No. It's not even worth going into. It certainly is not Missy. She's on top of it. Always is. I'll take it. Oh my God, she's incredible. Okay.
She highly recommended you, and yeah. There's Sean, your assistant. He's replying to me, so I'll say, we are good to go.
We are good to go.
Yes, we put out an all points bulletin on you this morning. Like, where is Athena?
Oh my God. Well, wouldn't you know it? I'm usually right there, right in front, right on time, but sometimes those glitches happen.
No, but I will tell you that I have loved reading your book. I've only gotten through the first part because it's so enjoyable to read. I have to sometimes go back to the next to the paragraph I just read and feel the emotion again. So
yeah. Well,
I don't know how it ends, but we'll talk about it.
Good. Well, it's Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And it's been that way, but I'll tell you what, I feel so incredibly blessed. So blessed.
Nice.
So everything it was wonderful to get me here, and I look at it that way.
Good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's all happening for a reason. How much time we got, Cam?
You got about 2 minutes to go. Stand by.
2 minutes to go. Okay.
I'm just setting up.
So I think just quickly, Athena, if we just focus on the life mastery journey, we certainly want to talk about a lot of your story in the beginning, but it's the revelations and what's come out of that and your life. So I think it's real appealing to the younger group today. They are so much, well, not all of them, but some of them are so much in despair and don't know which way to go. And we would kind of want to shine the light on that tunnel and let them know that it's going to be okay. I picked that up from your book and some of the other interviews I've heard you do. So I think that's a great message. Well,
and it certainly is how I feel. And I would like to shine the light, letting people know that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And that there's purpose, that there's absolutely purpose in the journey and in the path. Although at the time, most of the time we don't understand it.
Right.
When that's transpiring.
I was taught to look for the gift. It's there. Just trust it.
Yeah. And I always say, dive in and go for the gem and the scum because you'll pull it out.
All right. Stand by. Stand by. Here we go.
Thoughts about the topics, the hosts, and the special guests. You can also leave a suggestion. Then, when you're done, rate the show. The hosts love your feedback, and others appreciate it. So next time you download a show, take a second to leave your thoughts and rate it.
The views expressed on contacttalkradio.com are those of the guest hosts and callers, and not necessarily of this station, its management, or other advertisers.
This is contacttalkradio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on tunein.com, Bing.fm, and Upsnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to Life Mastery with Todd Allen, the talk radio show that dives into the science of higher consciousness. Join Todd and his guests weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific Time and learn how to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. Enjoy a survey of inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. It's all right here, leading authors, speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs with stories and messages to support your well-being, let alone your most evocative dreams.
Hey, it's another groovy day. And you know, I just love, every Tuesday, I just love to hear that intro because it just gets me all jazzed. I know that we are going to bring you great thoughts and ideas for you to use on your very own life mastery journey. We have a really cool guest today. And when I got up this morning, I decided it was going to be a groovy day. And here we are. We got Groovy Jackie and Groovy Athena. I'll introduce her here in just a minute.
Peace.
And make sure that you say hello to the lamppost. Some of you might know what that means, but one day you'll hear it and you'll know. Now I know what Todd's talking about. As always, I have my co-host with me today, Jackie Bailey, and Jackie has been busy. She just stepped up to the plate and smacked a grand slam. Well, it's not a home run yet, but the home run's coming, right?
That's right. I'm about second base, I think.
Rounding the bases. But tell us a little bit about what's going on, Jackie. I mean, all of a sudden, I didn't even know you were doing this. Boom, bang. You had an office, a studio, and you've started your own school.
I have, yep. I'm calling it the Speak, Feed, Lead Studio, and it's for public speaking classes for youth and adults. And I'm excited. We're taking out some walls and putting up new ones and putting up ceilings and painting and installing carpet and all kinds of fun stuff. So we're working on that. Hopefully we'll be ready to open for our first classes on September 16th. August is just gone for me. It went so fast.
Well, give us a little insight on what the vision is. So you have this space and you are going to be attracting youngsters. I mean, you're doing some amazing work with young people and helping them find their voice. So maybe highlight for us just a little bit that vision.
Yeah, well, I've been doing this now for about 4 years, teaching kids ages 10 to 17 how to find their unique message, how to identify the experiences they've had and what values they have gained, characteristics and traits that they have developed in themselves because of their experiences, and then help them discover how to share that, how to have confidence to speak their message, and even just have a conversation with each other. How do you talk to people respectfully? Yeah. How do you shake hands with someone in a formal situation? How do you be persuasive? I tell the kids all the time that I can help them to win an argument with their parents, and they all love that.
Whoa.
Because that's what life's all about.
You know, you've shared some stories with me on what these little kids, and I just get this picture that they're waking up to a part of them that they really had no idea existed. And you are helping them create a channel for that to flow through them and release it. Did I get it?
Yeah, well, kids are a lot like parrots. They will just repeat what they've been taught. And until they learn how to figure out what they really believe, they're just going to keep parroting that. But when they can delve deep into their story and their experiences and what that taught them, then they begin to have the sense of their own core value system. And when you have that, then you're not so vulnerable to what the world might tell you or the experiences that you have that aren't always going to be happy ones. They'll shape you based on what you already believe. So it's fun. I wish that I'd had that as a child and had that confidence to be able to say what I needed to say and be strong enough to know that this is what I believe and it doesn't matter what you say. So
yeah, it blows me away. Jackie and I have been judges a couple of times at some youth speech contests, and just recently, I think Jackie, we went up to Canada and we listened to like 40 speeches.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
From kids from like 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 16. And, you know, you get a real good sense that they are connecting to what's important to them. They are, I think we heard 80% of those speeches were either about animals, the environment, and, you know, and this is big. I mean, that's a big thing. And you also get the feeling too, Jackie, and you can probably chime in on this, but you're watching these kids and you're like, these kids, these young adults are the future. I mean, we might even be witnessing the next president of the United States giving a speech for the first time and expressing, you know, from their heart.
Well, and if they can have good experiences in speaking when they're young, they're not going to grow up like we did, fearful of what we might have to say or what do we do in these situations. They'll already know that. So I'm hoping that what I'm doing in a simple way is actually shaping their future to be more competent and confident leaders in all that they do. So it's a little thing I can do.
We certainly need more of that. Good job, Jackie. And if you want to know more, go to JackieBaileySpeaks.com.
Yep.
I think the links are on Life Mastery Radio. As a reminder to our listeners, today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.com. And anything that we talk about or links to our guests' information and website is all right there. You don't have to worry about writing anything down. And while you're there, sign up for the newsletter. Jackie does a great job every week letting us know who the guests are that are coming up and who the guests have been in the past. And it's a great way to just be informed, and then you can go and check it out. We have a YouTube channel. All the shows are put up on the YouTube channel, and they're raw, so you get all of the good, juicy stuff that happens. Yeah. Someday I'll grow up and learn how to edit those, right? Sign up for the newsletter, get informed, and Jackie does a blog post just kind of telling you, not kind of, she tells you what we talked about. That's what she does. Okay. Are we done housekeeping, sweeping the floor? We're all good?
I think so. Got the windows all
Our
clean.
guest today is Athena Demetrios. And for more than 30 years, Athena repressed the most traumatic memories of her childhood. Raised in abject poverty in a dysfunctional and alcoholic environment and terrorized by a repulsive boarder who lived in the root cellar, the monster in the basement, right? Athena succumbed to a downward spiral of melancholy and despair without recalling the memories. She had no knowledge of the reasons behind her suppressed rage and why she pushed people away and engaged in self-destructive love relationships. Struggling with reoccurring thoughts of suicide, she desperately sought answers. Fast forward, you know, this process of life mastery, we're going to call it her life mastery journey, that was not rapid. It took years of heroic willingness for Athena to confront her demons. Through it all, we see her evolve as a result of the painful interactions in her life, a suitor with a secret, a daughter she pushed away and struggled to forgive her alcoholic and irresponsible mother, all the while becoming a highly successful and in-demand makeup artist for film, TV, and commercials. And she wrote this amazing book called Walking Between Worlds, a Spiritual Odyssey. And Athena, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you. I am so happy to be here and spend time with both you and Jackie. And I think the work that you're doing, Jackie, is wonderful. Listening to your little conversation prior to going live here, I was really moved by some of the shaping, how you felt like your experiences somewhat shaped you. And here you are now helping youngsters and, you know, to have voice. And it's so important. And I do believe that when you go from the heart, you reach the heart. If it's so polished, people will skim over it. And everybody wants to be heard. Everybody has a voice. And the young kids have so much to say. So good for you and that work. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
It's fun.
Well, Athena, your book, I mean, this is your second book too, right? You wrote another book.
Well, let me clarify that. The first book was actually the extended version of this. I did remove some of the subject matter, which is going into another book because that's a complete book of itself, and went through, let's call it a polishing of the diamond. And so this is the work, culmination of probably 25, 28 years. I have lost count. But I also have come to really understand that it took that long for me to go through the levels of transformation, becoming empowered and getting very comfortable in my own skin. And as I say, I'm too conscious now to be unconscious, too aware to be unaware. Thank you, God.
Well,
right?
And that's really part of it. You know, my girlfriend, Coach Debbie, she helps people discover those stories that are inside them and work on getting those stories. And, you know, she's really focused on the transformation that occurs when somebody dives in deep and roots around. I like to call it, you know, like rooting around in the grass of a crash, and some of the pieces are still off in the grass smoking, and there's chunks of metal here, and you know, it's and trying to piece that all back together. And maybe we should start out a little bit with the backstory, a little bit, Athena, maybe before we get too deep into that.
Yes, and I can just do a little overview, but you made a statement about pieces of the crash being here and being over there. I always felt like I was doing the best I could in life, like I was running around. I felt like a bomb had somewhat blown me apart, and so I was running around, maybe attaching an arm where a leg should be. You know what I mean?
It's a great metaphor.
Yes, that's what it felt like. But trying to make myself functional and whole, doing the best that I can. But I also believe there does come a time, and I will get into that backstory, that if one makes the decision to heal, because everything in me knew that life was not meant to be lived with a lot of pain. I knew that inherently as a young child coming in. And I always felt that I was connected to something much bigger, the bigger all. And that was like the carrot that was in front of the donkey, even though I didn't understand everything. So now I'm going to go back to, and I'll just give it an overview here. But I was born into a dysfunctional alcoholic environment. My parents, well, my father was a Greek immigrant, and I always like to say that he was pretty illiterate because he really couldn't, he had no command of the English language, we'll put it that way, and couldn't read. But he inherited a tremendous amount of money from an uncle, Gus, who was a Greek shipping tycoon, very, very successful. So when Gus died, my parents inherited all this money. Would have been worth up to millions, gold mines, stocks, bonds. And he didn't understand the worth. He was a compulsive gambler. And my mother caught him burning stocks and bonds one time in the fireplace. And I have one here somewhere that's all charred around the corners. So that was difficult for her. She was not, my mother wasn't by any means, she was not a bad person. She was very compassionate in many, many ways, but simply could not cope with the loss of the wealth, lost her house, and then 7 kids to raise on minimum wage. And so she began to drink. There was a boarder who moved in. My father had left, and again, he was never around much, compulsive gambler. So he left, and then there was a boarder who moved into the root cellar of our basement. And I always say he lived there like a troll because it was actually hard, compact dirt. It's where they kept a lot of restaurant equipment. Right. And over a period of a year, I was repeatedly raped by him. But I would do what any child does and disassociate, leave the body as a way to not be present. Suffice it to say that I did have one specifically clear memory, but it was like watching a television program turn to snow up to a certain point.
Right, just blank.
But, yeah, just blank. So suffice it to say, I had a daughter out of wedlock when I was a junior in high school. My first love didn't work out. Became a workaholic. Makeup was my love. went to work for Revlon, but that was where I found success in my life.
Yeah.
In 1979, I had an event that brought me to my knees, literally to my knees. And I always like to say, because I think this is important, but I think, and I cannot speak for other people, I only speak for myself, but I do believe there comes a time in our lives, especially if we have created one that is not only dysfunctional, but can be chaotic as well.
Right.
Thank you, God, I did not turn to drugs and alcohol. But I felt like I was in a corner and I didn't have a 16th of an inch to turn. And I believe there are times in our lives when we do come to that point. That literally brought me to my knees. Never believed in God prior to that, but I really felt if life hurt that bad, the cause had to lie within me. And that was the defining moment. I had never studied any kind of spirituality, was never raised with anything except bless the potatoes and damn the meat and all of us hogs sit down and eat was kind of our prayer, you know. It really was. And so when that experience happened, it was at that moment that I had an epiphany, because I also saw that life had no choice but to bring back to me exactly what I had been creating in the world of others. So what goes around comes around. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That was a defining moment. At that exact moment, I said, oh my God, I understand. And there was a golden ray that came into my front room and it dusted everything with gold. Everything in my front room was dusted with gold. Could have taken that fine glitter, just thrown it everywhere. Didn't understand what was happening. But suffice it to say, after that, I was handed 3 books by, it's the Ascended Master, Saint Germain. I became a devout student of that at that point in time. I was ready to delve into anything because my life was such a mess. And I was willing, really willing to do whatever I had to do to turn things around. So I really jumped in with both feet. But now moving to some transformation on that, that was a process, because I believe it's like peeling the onion. And I often say it doesn't come as a technological download. It comes through experience. It really does. And it very seldom comes without crying. And I always say, where do all the tears come from? It's still my biggest mysterious question. So with that, that began to project me forward at different phases in my life where I did jump in with both feet and I did begin to explore. But it was all more for the development of my consciousness, my awareness, the expansion of who I was. And that really truly began 1979. And so I continue with that to this day.
What compelled you to explore your story? I mean, let's just back up just a little bit before I get too far ahead of myself, because I got the sense from some of the interviews and from what I've read that you always felt like you were connected to something, but you just couldn't connect that in. Is that true? Did I get that?
Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yes, that's very true. My very first memory was I was probably 2 years old and I was standing on the lawn and I was looking up at the stars at night, and I cannot even explain how homesick I felt. I wanted to go home and I didn't know how to get back. And everything, the stars, the planets, looked like there were millions and millions of miles away, and I felt separated from it and I wanted to go home so bad. But of course, home was that place within my heart. And I always say, I do believe with all my heart that we know, that we absolutely know that we do belong. There's part of us that knows we belong to the greater all, whether you call it God, Goddess, all that is,
whatever it is,
Christ, whatever consciousness that is. I think that's innate within our soul, and our experiences in life begin to shape us in such a way that we begin to separate ourselves from that, and that becomes like an illusion. And
well, let's just take a minute and drill down in that, Athena, because I think this is really important, especially for our listeners, is that, you know, in my case, And in your case, and you and Jackie share a lot of the same story. You guys, you could be sisters.
Soul sisters.
That's right.
But it doesn't have, I guess my point is it doesn't have to take that desperation for us to get that connection. It's there.
It is there. And for me, I never understood at the time, and this is, of course, before I went back and I started doing the work to go back, reclaim some of the memories so that I could become empowered, so that I would own the experience, that it didn't own me. Okay? And not everybody, of course, has that or goes to that degree of that. But I do always like to say, if anyone who is listening, and if I say if you're listening, I'm going to speak to your heart, because that's who I like to speak to. But if you are having trouble in a relationship, if you have gone through a breakup, whether it's perhaps it's a failure of a business or a marriage, but if you can ask yourself, how has this served me? How has it helped me grow as a soul? How has it served me? Then you will own the experience, and it's not going to own you. And that's a tool that everybody can use. Get a journal, write, let yourself cry. Don't expect to feel good when you're doing this. That's part of it. But if you do begin, let's say perhaps your issue is bigger and you feel that you need some help with that, well, good for you for having that wisdom. Because I always say it is the master within you. God got us all that is. It's that presence of all life that's beating your heart. That is the one that's inspiring you to heal, so that you can become your better self, that you can become more empowered, that you can have that gift to give life. And I do believe that anytime anybody goes through something, some levels can be a little bit more horrific. Pain is pain. We all have it. But if you can extract the gem, then here, maybe years down the road, I can inspire somebody not to give up, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'm out here swinging the lantern for you. You will get through it. You will get through it.
Wow.
Jackie, something come to mind. I've been dominating the conversation. I'm so sorry, but I've just been fast. She's fascinating.
Yeah. Athena, it's wonderful to hear your voice, because your voice comes through so loud and clear in your book.
Oh,
and
thank you.
Frankly, your talent for writing such an eloquent, emotional way is just amazing to me. And so,
thank you.
Your story is amazing, but the way that you've written it is also just an amazing talent.
Well, that's interesting, because I was a high school dropout. I never really, and I would go sit by a creek as a troubled teenager, and I would just write. And I was told by someone who eventually, when you get a little bit further into the book, became my mystical muse. He's someone that I channel. And he was the one who encouraged me to write the book. This was in 1982. And he said, let it be raw. He said, don't define it. Let it be raw. So I can tell you and the listeners, I do not color anything. I don't make it more than what it was. I write it exactly as it happened. And I have an uncanny, almost a photographic memory, I believe now, of events. I can remember the way perhaps somebody had their head tilted, or what they were wearing, or the way that they said something. And then there were events as a child that I completely blanked out. That was like being caught in a fog. And my siblings would say, don't you remember? I'd say, no, I don't remember. And they'd say, come on, you remember? And I'd say, no. And I really didn't. I didn't remember. So I always said that was kind of fascinating. What do I leave in and what do I leave out? And why did I do that?
Right. Well, that further amazes me, that you can remember so clearly some details and yet have completely forgotten others. And maybe that's because, as you say, how has that served you? Maybe those things that you've forgotten haven't really served you. And there's no reason to necessarily to remember them, but those details that you can remember so clearly are those parts of your experience that are important to your journey.
Yes. Well, no, I would say that's pretty accurate, because down the road, let's say several years down the road, when I did make a very conscious decision, because I had such inner turmoil, I was feeling that inner turmoil, and I thought, you know what, I want to go back and I want to wrestle this demon to the mat. And I remember 10 years prior seeing a therapist who tried to get me to go down some stairs. I would not do it. But I had also written on a piece of paper, I'd had this dream where I was trying to rescue this little girl out of this basement. And I was blocked from this basement by two figures. And I wrote on the piece of the paper, I'm not strong enough to get her out yet, but one day I will be. And so when I did make the decision, that piece of paper, as everything else in my life, which is very symbolic, surfaced a week before I was able to connect up with Dr. Slavin. And I always say he put Humpty Dumpty together again with a collaboration of the higher self. But those experiences that I did, let's say compartmentalize, and that's a good term, I wasn't strong enough at the time. And that's the way, I think as a child, you will do whatever. Well, I can't speak for other people, just myself, but I did what I had to do to survive. And it was like, I always say it was like taking butter and perhaps smearing that butter on the lens of glasses, because it colored the way I saw people, the way that I would allow people to touch me, not touch me. Always had that wall, very defensive. But that was because of creating that, wanting to be safe, safety and sanctuary. But when I went back and I made a decision to go back and remember, I wanted to remember. And then I actually physically at some point went back into the house and physically went back down into that basement. Wow. Yeah. And it was, but that was amazing. And all of that is in the book, everything. And let me just say this, because I think this is important. Something before I decided to see, well, it was actually when I went to see Dr. Slavin, and I interviewed several different therapists, because I was not willing to turn this over to just anybody, because I don't feel just anybody's qualified to do that kind of work. Right. But when I heard his voice, something in me knew instantly this was a person, and I was so right on. My instincts were so dead point center. But something told me to record those sessions. So what's in my book is recorded sessions with him. So the listener or the reader goes on that journey with me.
Now you begin your book with a lot of your mother's experience as a child. How did you know that? Did you have a conversation with your mom at some point?
Oh yeah, okay. I did. And my mother, oh my God, she was such a wonderful storyteller. I mean, she was an incredible storyteller, and she just had this way of pulling you in through her visions. And it's like I was saying in the book, you could almost smell the fragrance or feel the texture.
Yeah, can I read that part of your book?
Of course, you can read you can read whatever you want, whatever makes your little heart happy. Just read completely whatever you'd like.
This speaks to your wonderful ability to write, but it also goes to this story about how your mother was this wonderful storyteller, because this is on page 6 of your book. And I'm just going to read one paragraph that really illustrates both points. You say, the fireplace in our house served as the perfect stage, as did the old wooden bench that would creak and wobble with the weight of our bodies as we perched like crows, warming our backs against the flickering flames. Somehow the furniture didn't look so disgusting, the walls not quite so dirty or in need of paint when Mother told her tales. I loved the patterns of golden color that danced in the darkness, casting shadows on the ceiling and floor. During those times, I didn't feel so afraid.
I remember that well. And I also remember with that, she would take she smoked, and she would take a wooden match and she would just, run it across the old blackened brick, light a cigarette. And when she would love to fire, we all did, but she would put those big old pieces of wood in the fireplace, and it would just become this explosion of colors, of pieces of burnt newspaper. And then she always had this way of kind of settling herself back on the bench, and she'd cross her leg and she would put her chin, like this. And then she would say, well, let's see now. I can remember one time when my mother was giving me a bath in an old galvanized tub. And then that's when she goes into seeing her father for the first time. And yeah, but she was so descriptive. But what I remember most, and that happened to be one of my favorite parts in that, because I can still see her face, and she would, because sometimes she would just get this vacant look in her eyes, and it was kind of like always a sacred space that I felt like I didn't want to say anything. And because and then she would kind of shake herself and she said, good God, was Mother Nature merciless, and kind of snap her back to reality. But I just remember one time that just the way she turned her face, and like I said, it was just bathed in this saffron glow from the fireplace. And that was, Mom was a very beautiful individual. Her biggest challenge in life would have been to write a book. Her biggest challenge. She had a wonderful relationship she loved the bigger mysteries in life, but she also fought against hell and damnation, fire and brimstone. Yeah. So there was always that pull within her.
Do you have a respect for her now that your life?
Oh my God, yes. And that was quite a journey for the healing, because I was so filled with anger for so long, because I felt like she didn't protect us. Yeah. She did not, or she didn't, protect me from those experiences with him. But yes, I was finally able to I was able to forgive her. And I would like to highlight something here, because I think this is important if we have enough time here.
Sure.
Okay. When I first began working with Dr. Slavin, and he put me under, because my defenses were so strong, that was one of the ways that we were going to be able to access, these memories. And I remember him telling me that I went under so deeply, and there is a word for it. It means deepest state of trance possible. So he used to say to me, he would say, your soul takes you where you need to go for healing. And so sometimes he would just barely start to count me under, and I was off and running either to past life around Christ, where I was a Roman tribunal judge. That's in the book. And then there's another one, but this is so fascinating. He was guiding me to something when I was a young child, but I didn't go there. I went to before I was born. Yeah. And I was amongst these masters and teachers, and they were showing me where I was going. And they were showing me a family that I was going to be born into. And they were also letting me know there were going to be situations that were going to be very difficult and very trying. But what they were showing me was how I could change in this lifetime. And so I always say they were showing me and underscoring what could be and what might be. But all of that was going to be determined on how I perceived to see myself, victim or creator. Do you get the jewel and the gem from the scum of the experience, or do you stay locked in victimhood and resentment? And that's hard to let go of. Right. Because sometimes we like that, because that can become part of our story.
At least it gives you an excuse when you're a victim, right?
Yes, it does. I don't have to participate in life, you know. So that was interesting. But what I do want to say is that feeling of love, that feeling of safety, and the expansiveness of my soul in that state of awareness. And I always say the only thing I compare it to is if you know now that your soul is inside your body, it's confined inside your body, but on the other side, it was like there was no body. But that state of awareness was as large as an ocean. It was as large as the United States of America. And so what really became a defining moment for me was one time after my mom had died, and I felt nothing but, and I'm going to be very, very honest here, I felt nothing but relief and sadness at her death. I felt relieved and but sad at the same time. I had been hoping for resolve, but it didn't happen. But after she had made her transition, I remember talking to a wonderful medium, and I said, "How is my mom doing?" And he said, "She weeps much in her slumber." Broke my heart. Broke my heart. And he said, "She is constantly wiping her brow with the back of her hands," as she did in life. She did that in life. And she would say, "I can't deal with it." Always doing that, you know. So her ability to cope was very difficult. And I found myself thinking, oh my God, how would I feel with that state of awareness, looking back at my life and seeing where I had missed the mark? And especially with my children. And I can't speak for other siblings, just myself. And I didn't want her to feel that way.
Right.
And so I was truly able to forgive my mom. And I always say this, from the heart, because there's a big difference from the heart and not the head. And only recently, and I am now 72, and it was probably about a month or a month and a half ago, and I had been meditating, and I was just, for whatever reason, reflecting back on him, the perpetrator. And I thought, what in God's name ever happened to him to cause so much pain that he would react like he did in life? And so I was able to fully forgive him and ask that wherever he's at, that he is assisted to the highest plane possible that he could possibly go to, and was enabled to envelop him in a lot of love. But that's very freeing. So I don't feel tied to that. I can talk to anybody in depth about the good, bad, and the ugly, but I just see it as transformation and the ability to become more alive now and feel a sense of joy. And I'd give anything if my mom was alive now, you know, because she was so into the mystical then. Go ahead.
I just want to take a minute and remind our listeners that if you just tuned in, you are listening to Athena Demetrios, and she wrote a wonderful book called Walking Between the Worlds. And according to Jackie during the pre-show, it's an amazing read that's very descriptive, and it's not often that Jackie comes out and says, "What exactly did you say?" You said, "I'm just falling in love with this book, and I can't wait to finish reading the entire thing."
Yeah. And, you know, it's been wonderful. That's been the continuum where people have said, bless their hearts. And I'm so happy about that. They've had difficulty putting it down. And that thrills me, because it has never been about any kind of really public acknowledgement, or part of me always has wanted to run and hide in the hills. You know, I think sometimes the old healers, we want to do that. And but it's always been my prayer, and my dream has always been to inspire others.
That's what it's all about. So let's just drill down in that a little bit, because your book, how is it? I know you went through a therapist, and somebody else had told you, you know, to start to write these stories. Did you know that compiling these stories would create such a huge transformation in your life?
Well, it was moving through all of the experiences that created the transformation. And probably the biggest, again, was that spiritual awakening, 1979, because when I began to go inward and do that inner work, that because it never comes outwardly. I mean, the outer world is nothing of a projection of our thought and feeling. It really is. And so it's like, if you want to, what is that? You want to be or become the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly.
And so, but it doesn't come at one time. It comes in layers. And where I am now with it, after, I've explored certainly, let me back up here because I think this is important for a listener to hear. Again, if you are feeling so out of touch with your spirit, or don't even know you're connected to spirit, but there's that longing to, or for me, it's like, how can I ever change?
Right.
How can I ever do that? Well, you can. First of all, don't let go of that desire and know that it's possible. Second of all, if you're feeling discomfort, if you seek out a therapist, find a good one and get some help navigating you through the storm. Because it takes someone qualified and skilled to be able to be objective. I couldn't be objective with my own journey, because what we want to do as human beings is cut out the pain and remove it.
Or fix it, or try and justify it, or rationalize it.
Oh, and if you had a broken wing, I was there.
Yeah.
And if you had two broken wings, let me take care of you. But I was told something very wise, was that sometimes your attention upon another person's pain is a clever diversion from keeping your attention off healing yourself. It's great wisdom in that. Yeah, great wisdom.
Yeah, totally.
So moving through the emotions, if you are exploring, just know it's a process. Even if you write it down, this is a process, I will survive. But it usually is tapping into some anger. That can move into some rage. That could move into a lot of crying, some grief, some loss, some acceptance, forgiveness. All of that will come in its own time and its own space. So allow yourself to process each one of those. You cry like hell, I always say, that's okay. Go home, take a hot bath, eat chocolate. Watch some movies, get an In-N-Out burger, whatever it is, make mac and cheese.
Chocolate seems to me that that's the
something
cure
healing
all,
about
right?
that. Oh yeah.
It's chocolate.
Yeah. But you'll get through it. You'll move through it that way. Because I always say you can't get from A to Z. You can't jump, well, I'm going to forgive this person. But to get from A to Z, it's let yourself move through the process. And sometimes that's slow. But again, sometimes one wants to shove it down, or they feel that if it comes up, they're not going to be able to survive. But you will. You'll cry, and you'll cry for a couple of days. But guess what? 2 days later, you're going to feel a little bit lighter. If it hurts going down, it hurts coming up, but it doesn't last forever.
Was there any reserve, Athena? Was there any reserve about some of the stories that you put in your book, or did it all just seem to flow and you were okay with it? Put it out there.
Okay. No. Was there reserve? Yes. Yes. Because I always say it felt like stripping myself naked and handing everybody a magnifying glass and say, here, you want to see this little bump or this cellulite? Here, take a good look, and just magnifying everything, because I knew in my heart that if I was going to write a book, I had to be gut level, honest, and raw to the bone with it. And some of it that's in there, I still have difficulty. You haven't gotten there yet. You'll know when you get there. And it's still difficult for me to even read that. It was difficult to write about it, but it was part of my journey and part of what shaped me. So how can I say that any of it was nothing but a blessing? Can't, That's the way I feel now. So, but what did happen was that I had written about certain things, and I'd shove it away in a metal file cabinet. And I'd say, oh yeah, I need to write about that, shove it away. And then I was in a mall in Los Angeles, and this very beautiful, elegant woman in her 60s came up to me, very well dressed, shook a finger in my face. And she said to me, your life may very well become a film and a TV movie of the week, and you need to be writing. You could be helping millions of women.
Did she know you? Who was this woman?
No, she was a clairvoyant. I had no idea. She was a complete stranger. But I mean, she got in, when I say she got in my face, she got in my face, maybe 6-7 inches from my face, shaking this finger. And I thought about that, and it was just, I always say it was like this lightning bolt that went through me, because there was such resistance with it, because there was so much fear of what would people think. Right. And I don't think that's unusual for a writer.
Right.
But when she said, you know, it may very well become a film and a TV movie of the week, and I didn't put that in the forward because it sounded a little self-serving, but that's what she said. But what she right on the hills, you could be helping millions of women. So when I went home, I thought about what she said, and I thought, well, how would I feel if I were to die tomorrow? And I thought I'd feel very good about my growth, what I've accomplished, what I've healed. But I would feel as if I backed out of fear. And so that's when I said, to hell with it. And I just popped the cork and let it flow. So when I would sit down to write, it would flow. I just kind of write like I'm talking to myself. And I talk like a sailor in it as well. You'll discover that. But hey, that's where it was. And that was honest.
I was the same way. I was a little reserved about some of the things, but you know, I've read the book over and over again. And so you'll probably get this too. Oh, I missed this thing. Or, oh, I should have put that in there. Oh, yeah. What about this?
Well, you know what I did? I started thinking about experiences, and I thought, oh yeah, that's a good one. I need to put that in because it was important. So I would just write it down on like an index card, and I didn't do an outline. Yeah, I just didn't. I mean, you know, English wasn't my. Wow. I didn't, and then when I found a wonderful editor, it was just terrific. I knew I was at a point where I needed an editor, and I remember seeing somebody's, it would be like if I was to see your face, Jackie, in a magazine, and something would keep pulling me back, and I keep putting that page back to look at your face again. Yes, he's there. And I would, you know, I would see that face, and so I finally reached out, and she was a wonderful PhD professor for 30 years at Chico State, creative writing. And she said, send me, you know, send me your intro and prologue. I sent it to her, and I got a response right away. She said, this is fascinating stuff. I'm on board.
Cool.
So God bless her. She's, so.
Well, I love the gut level and rawness.
Oh, thank you.
Of your story. And because when I was healing from trauma myself, I was given a book by my therapist that was very raw. It was someone who had an experience similar to mine, who had written a book about it. And my therapist felt that it was so important that I hear this story or read this story. And that's what helped me heal. If it had been sugar-coated, I would not have connected enough to realize this person made it through. I can do it as well. And so I know that your ability to write in that way is going to help those who absolutely need to be helped in that regard. If it's hard for someone else to read it, it's probably because they haven't experienced what you've experienced. And for them, it might feel kind of icky.
Oh, it is icky.
And they may stop reading it, but it's because they don't need that healing, that level of healing in their life. But for those who do, that's what us victims, we need that. We need to know that someone else has experienced what we've experienced, that it is yucky, it's gross, and there's details we don't want to tell other people, but when we hear other people say it, we are more empowered to say it ourselves when we're
and if it can give anybody voice. Because I think one of the things that's happened, you know, as a result of those experiences and becoming highly sensitive or intuitive. And there was a time when, you know, I did work with, you know, a group of teenagers, and wasn't long, but boy, I just felt such empathy. And because it's such a difficult time, it's not easy. You're trying to get comfortable in your own skin, and you're dealing with peer pressure, everything else. But I remember being in there, and these were gang kids. I remember it was kind of, went to speak at a high school. It was kind of their last resort. And I remember I could look in that whole group And I knew every girl in there and a guy who had been sexually abused. I could feel it. I could see it.
Right.
And, you just wanted to hug them and let them know, hey, you're going to get through this. You're going to be okay. Yeah. So I would highly, and at some point I really would like to work with teenagers, because I think, if they can get pointed in the right direction, and if they can help or have that assistance and that help, because everybody is unique. Everybody comes in with a gift. Everybody. And everybody's gift is different to give life. And we're here, really to discover that purpose and to give that gift to life. And even at the time, one may not understand how they're going to get there, but as long as, or if they think in terms, and I would like anyone listening to this, because I always like to say this, that find what qualities, well, I'm just going to ask you, Jackie, what quality, and I know you've got qualities, but what quality do you really like about yourself? And I always like to say love. People say, when they hear that love, it's like, oh my God, that sounds narcissistic. I don't mean it that way. But what quality do you love about yourself?
Well, when I was going through the toughest times of my life as a child, I remember thinking, if I can survive this, I will be a strong person. So I feel now that I am a strong person, and that is one of the qualities that I would not have developed had I given up, or had I taken a different path in life than what I did. There's so many other choices I could have taken besides what I did. But I just kept thinking, if I can make it through this, I'm going to be a strong person. And that's been the case. Absolutely.
And that inner strength. Now, how about you? What is a quality that you,
For me?
Yes, you, Mr. Handsome Man. What is it?
My number one quality is to feel groovy. And
That's nice. We love that. God knows that we need to do that. So it's kind of like feeling groovy.
And I walk around with that thought in mind, and it works for me. I get up every morning, and we had a really nice interview with one of our guests, and she got me going on, I feel groovy and I inspire others to feel groovy too. And that's me.
Wonderful.
That's what I do. And that's what the show's about. It's what happens when I speak on a stage, and it works for me.
And you're an uplifter.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And motivator.
Yeah. Motivator, uplifter, help people feel groovy. And, for me, mine is courage.
Yeah.
I love my courage. So but I always like to ask people, and I would ask anyone who's listening, what are the qualities that you love about yourself? Because they're there.
Start to explore those.
Yes, to explore those. But it's those qualities in you that is the presence of God within you.
Totally.
Every beautiful quality, kindness, generosity, courage, perseverance, uplifting, feeling groovy, happiness, those are all the presence of the Spirit within you.
Oh my goodness, ladies. I don't want to interrupt, but we only have about 3 minutes left. Can you believe it, Athena?
We'll just have to do it again.
Let's do it.
Well, right? I'm on board.
Sure. I would love to have Athena back. She's got a groovy book. And Athena, tell us what your website is. It's in...
The website is I am within.
Yeah.
I am within.
.com. And you can find Athena there. You work with people one-on-one, is that true?
I do. I do private sessions, and I channel a wonderful character named Dr. Peebles. He's my mystical muse, so I channel him, and he's wonderful. But he also has wonderful tools of loving allowance, increased communication, self-responsibility. Our life is a creative adventure. And so working with people is to really inspire and help them to come more alive in this embodiment. And so that's my joy. And then I do some workshops with connecting people to the source of light within themselves, empowering them that way.
Nice. You have such great energy and such a great smile. Look at that. Oh, you were just about ready to crack
I'm covered up by something. But over the 70, I need the glasses to see it. So we'll just let it be there, whatever it is.
All right. It's the morning.
Oh, thank you so much, my dear, for being on the show today. This was such great fun. And it went by too quick.
It
that's the way it
did,
happens
but
when we
we'll
have
have
fun.
to go again because there's so much we can cover. I would love to do that.
I think Jackie really gets in. Jackie's going to read some more of your book, and I will too. Jackie's going to finish your book. I have a good feeling.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Wonderful. And where are you?
We're in Seattle.
In Seattle. Great. Okay. So
where are you?
I'm in Northern California, very close to Chico.
Okay.
Where our town grew overnight because of the Paradise Fires.
Right. Oh, everybody moved your direction, huh?
Yes, my editor, God bless her, but she's living next door. She lost her house, but she is right next door within arm's reach. Hey, come over for dinner tonight.
That's about all we have time for today.
Okay.
I am so sorry. We'll connect again.
Thank you so much. This has been a real blessing. And
I want to remind everybody, choose to check out Athena.
You too.
Check out Jackie, and for sure, make it a great day. It's all about choice, and you too can choose to have a groovy day. Bye-bye for now.
Sure. Oh. Bye.
Thank you for...
Okay.